Hello, welcome to my channel, and in this video I want to show you how to install and begin setting up a Proxmox server that's a virtualization host. It's a type 1 hypervisor that runs on bare metal. That means you just install it directly onto a computer. You don't need any other operating systems like Linux or even Windows. You can run those in virtual machines on it, and quite often on my machines that are just running one of those operating systems, the actual utilization is very low. I don't play games, and most of the things I do use very little CPU power. So if you want to, you can use more of your available computing power by installing virtual machines on the same hardware. And you can have a lot of virtual machines if you want, only limited by the amount of RAM you have in the machine. So to install Proxmox, you have to put the ISO on a boot device as a USB stick. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You download the ISO from the website, which I might show you later, and then you write it to the boot USB stick. People like to use Berliner Etcher, which has privacy problems at the moment apparently, or the other one for Windows I forgot the name of. I like to use the DD command on a Linux command line just to write a .image file into a USB stick and make it bootable. If you're a professional distro hopper, then you might have one of these, an IODD device. This is a virtual CD-ROM, and with this you only have to copy the ISO file onto it. You don't need to burn it in the way you would to a USB stick, and then it emulates a DVD-ROM drive and presents it to whatever machine you plug it into through the cable, and it looks like a DVD ISO. What I'm going to do is install Proxmox onto a small Fujitsu device. Let me see if I can show it to you. It's this thin client. I've got one running at the moment, an S940, which is running Reticulum and Nomad.net and various things in virtual machines. This is the slightly more powerful S9010, and these use Intel, I think is it Pentium Silver, J5005, those kinds of series of low power processors. There's one under here, which is 10 watt TDP or less. Doesn't need a fan, so it's a silent server, which I like. And at the moment I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM in here and an SSD, which is not an NVMe, it's an M.2 mini PCI. This is what these particular devices use, and I've plugged into the front the IODD drive to boot it from. And just to show you the hardware on the back, it's just a standard thin client device with an Ethernet connection, a couple of display connections, DisplayPort, which I'm capturing on another machine using an HDMI converter, HDMI to USB. Sorry for the poor video quality when I start that. So you need a monitor plugged in and a keyboard, maybe even a mouse, and I use a little dongle for a wireless keyboard mouse here. Once you've installed the software, you don't need to use these ever again, so you can unplug them because it's all managed from another machine via the Ethernet connection and a web browser interface. You can tell this is meant for a server use because it's got serial ports on it and a PS2 mouse and keyboard connector, which hasn't been used for decades. Although this is a relatively modern device, these are not very old at all. They still have some of the older hardware interfaces. So that's enough about that. What I'm going to do now is switch over to the captured video from this device, hopefully, and you'll be able to see what's on the screen. There we are. So that is the BIOS from that device, which is powered up and running. To enter the BIOS depends on the machine you're using. You can install it on any Intel x86 compatible machine. So you to enter the BIOS you press F2 on some machines, on others you press delete or insert. They're all different, or F1. I think this one's F2. And I'm not going to take you through the BIOS. Maybe we'll just look at the CPU settings. I'm not sure what they look like on here. You need virtualization enabled, that's VT-X, and you need VT-D also enabled. These are the two virtualization settings for an Intel CPU, which allow it to then run compartmentalized virtual machines under Proxmox or other virtualization servers. Of course, the other standards are VMware, which I don't really like. It looks a bit commercial to me. And also boxes and cubes and things that run on other operating systems. I like to run on bare metal and use Proxmox. And of course, it's open source based on Debian Linux and works nicely. So you need to make sure those are set, and you need to make sure that the machine can boot from a USB device with the right settings. You don't need TPM turned on, you don't need secure boot. And actually this BIOS allows me to boot directly from an external drive rather than reboot the machine and then press the right key. On most computers you press F12 to get a boot menu to select the boot device. Same on this one, but I'm just going to go straight in from here and boot from that IOTD virtual CD-ROM, which already has the Proxmox ISO on it, latest version, which is 8.2 or something like that. So there it is. You're greeted with this welcome screen, and you just press enter to install it graphically, because you can also do it from the terminal command line, but I like to be lazy and do it using the GUI, graphical interface. And it'll take a second or two to boot, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to read that because it's small print on a low resolution video converter, but anyway, later on it'll look better because we'll be using web browser to connect to the machine. And it's a good idea to have a Ethernet cable plugged into a router with internet there, because then it gets the correct time and location and so on. So there's the end user license agreement, which of course we read in great detail, and then click I agree. And you have to choose the device you want to install it to. This is difficult for me to read. This is the internal SSD. It's a 120 gigabyte SSD in the machine. Make sure you don't install it to your boot drive or any other drives you might have connected. So that's the right one. So we click next. And then country, it's auto-detected. It's in Germany. And keyboard layout is also German, which suits me, time zone Berlin. So that's fine for the location of this machine. Of course, you can do this remotely via the internet. Give it a password. So I'm going to give it a password. I have to think of one. And then you have to confirm the password to make sure it's the same. So it's a password. Email address, you don't need to put anything in there. You can just use that. I do put my real email address in case they ever want to email me. I never got an email from Proxmox people. Oh, yeah, okay, I've never tried that before, so it needs a real one. So let's give it one. So this means that they do collect email addresses and see who's using the software, but it's open source, so I don't mind. So it's got a Ethernet adapter. There's only one in this machine. If you're using a proper server mainboard, then you might have 2 or 4 or other Ethernet cards. This only has one, so that's the one. You can give it a host name. I'm not going to bother, but if you want to reach it from outside through reverse proxy like Nginx or a zero trust service from Cloudflare or whatever, you need to give it a real host name. But in this case, I'm not going to bother. It's got an IP address via DHCP from the router it's plugged into. Normally you would set this to something a bit nicer, but I'm going to leave that because that's what it's been given, and then in the router you can change that to issue a different IP address on the next boot if you want to. And gateway address is correct. IP DNS server is also correct. That's my Pi-hole, which I recommend using a Pi-hole DNS blocker. So then you click next, and that's it. Those are the settings. It's got a password, it's got a user, yeah, everything's there. So just click install, and that will install Proxmox on this machine. It'll take it a minute or two, it's not that big, and afterwards you'll just be presented with a prompt on the screen, if you still have the screen plugged in when you reboot it, and it tells you what IP address to look at with a web browser in order to manage the server. This Proxmox is very efficient. The actual overhead is very small, so if you're used to using a certain machine with a certain operating system and then you put Proxmox on it and put the operating system into a virtual machine, you'll notice a slight decrease in performance, but not very much. Not a big decrease at all, so it's quite efficient, which is nice. And I find it easy to use once you've got past the learning curve of how to do things, which is what I intend to show you. in the rest of the video, or perhaps in another video if it gets too long. So I'm going to leave this running, and I'm going to pause the video, and after it's finished it'll say, do you want to reboot? And you press yes, and then you'll see the screen we get. So I'll see you after the pause and the reboot. So after the reboot, then I'm greeted with this login page, which I'm not going to use, but it tells me the address to point the web browser to, the URL. That's the IP address of the machine, the host, Proxmox host, with :8006 on the end, which is the port number, which is normally used as standard for Proxmox, although of course you could change it. So the next thing to do is to go over to another computer which is connected to the same network and has a web browser, and we'll use that to continue configuring the Proxmox server. A couple of things I forgot to say is that before installing on the internal SSD in the server, it's a good idea to format the drive and create a partition on it, because depending on what was on it before, sometimes the Proxmox installation gives errors and doesn't work. So I found the easiest thing to do is just to format the drive as FAT32 and then install onto that, and that's fine. And the other thing is that I think Proxmox, after installing, does prompt you to unplug the USB drive that you booted the machine from, because if you don't, when it reboots, it'll boot back onto the USB drive and not into the installed operating system that you've just installed on the internal SSD. So you need to you do that as well. Anyway, the next thing to do is to go on another machine, which is what I'm showing you here, different computer, and to go to this URL with the 8006 port number on the end. If you don't put that there, it just says page not found, and you think it's not working, so you need to put that on the end. So let's do that, and I've got that in the next tab, and there you see a warning. It's nothing nasty. It's just because this is using HTTPS, so it's encrypted connection, but because the certificates being used are not signed by an authority, they're self-generated certificate, then it's not recognized by this browser, what is it, Firefox, as being valid, so it recommends you don't connect to it. If this was a website on the internet, you probably shouldn't connect, but because it's a server on your own local network, it's fine, and you know what it is, you trust it. So you click on Advanced, and then scroll down a bit and click on Accept the risk and Continue, because you know what it is. And here we are ready to log into the Proxmox user interface. The username is root. Password is what I chose earlier, which is, what was it? Okay, never forget your password. There's no subscription for the server, which means it won't get the production style security updates, which are not really necessary because it gets all other necessary updates, but it's not guaranteed for use in a production environment. But I don't mind because it's a home lab server. So we say OK to that. This is just a history of what's happened. I don't want that taking up space, so let's get rid of that. And let's make this a bit bigger. So this is the Proxmox data center, because you can have more than one node in it. There's only one node in it, which is the one I just set up, but you can actually install more machines with Proxmox and then link them together to form a data center and merge things and migrate virtual machines from one to the other and so on, if you want to shut one of them down. But that's too advanced for this and not really necessary for what we're doing. So this is the user interface for the device I just installed, called PVE, Proxmox Virtual Environment. If you click on Summary, you can see what's in the box. There's 16 gigs of RAM and currently 1.4 gigabytes in use. So that's how much the this virtualization host uses itself, 1.4, 1.5 gigabytes, which is not too much. It's used about 2.8 gigabytes of hard drive, which is also not very much. So all in all, it's quite a slim installation. I like that. And this is the CPU I was talking about. It's a Pentium Silver J5040, which has 4 threads, which is fine for the sort of things I want to do with this. And then you can see there's the history graphs of CPU usage. It's been running for a while, so you can see that it's 0.5% till it peaked for some reason there. Server load, how much memory is being used, this much from that much, and network traffic, not very much at the moment. So that's the host itself. and there are no virtual machines on here yet. But before I do anything, I need to sort out the storage because it's separated into two different volumes. I like to have it all in one, so I've got notes on how to do that, and I recommend you probably do it, because if you outgrow the size of one of these, you run into trouble, and it's easy just to have everything in one large volume using the whole drive, I've discovered. So what we have to do is go to that data center and then storage, local LVM, and remove it. So data center, storage, local LVM is this one, and then you remove it. Seems odd, doesn't it? You sure? Oh yes. So it's gone. And now these are the steps I need to go through. Then you go to data center, storage, local, edit content and everything. So data center, storage, local. Why did that not get removed? Wait a minute. Local LVM, remove. Maybe it still shows it, but it's not there anymore. Let's just say yes to that again. Or maybe I didn't do it right. So now we look at local, and what do you want to do with that? Edit content and add everything. You can actually just double click on it, and here's the content. These are the different kinds of files which could be stored on it, and I want everything to be stored on here. So they're already clicked, most of these, so they're already selected. Let's select that one again. So all of these different types are selected to be stored on that storage. So let's say OK to that, and that's done. And then the next thing to do is go to the node name and the shell of it. So the node name is pve, and shell means command shell, which is here. Click on that, and this is a shell. So you can see this is just the root user logged into a shell. And what do we do in there? Just copy and paste these commands. So I'm going to do that with Control-Shift-V because it's command line. Do you really want to do this? Oh yes. Okay, so that's been removed. And then the next one, to resize it to fill up the space, and so on we go through. Control-Shift-V. So that's done. And then we have to edit the list of software sources to remove one entry for enterprise, because I don't have a subscription here. So let's do this, and then you comment out the only line with a hash symbol. So that's easy. Keep pressing the wrong buttons here. So there we are. There it is. There's the one line. Put a hash in front of it. This is a Swiss keyboard. It was cheap. And I don't know where the hash key is. Maybe it's that one. Yes. Okay. So that's commented out now. So let's save it with Control-X to exit. Save it. Yes. Press Enter. So that's done. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Make sure a DNS server is present. So let's have a look. See if that works. So let's ping something. Make sure we have internet access before doing any updates, and that's working, so that's good. And then the next thing to do after that is to reboot the server. Let me just check. Yeah, and then we edit the software sources and do an upgrade. So let's reboot it, and instead of typing reboot, I'm going to press the button that says reboot. And do you want to do it? Yes. What I'll do is I'll pause the video and come back after it's rebooted. So the reboot is finished. What I did was press the reload button on the browser, and it connects straight away because the password is still valid. So we've done that. In fact, if we look at the local storage now, you see there's only one drive. You may have noticed there were two before. And if we look at that, you can see that the local PVE storage was 40 gigabytes big, and then when I deleted the other one and expanded into the space, it's gone up to the 120 or so gigabytes. So it'll stay at that level from now on the graph as it moves across in time. So what do we do next? Oh yeah, the software repositories need editing, and so let's have a look at those. Sometimes I get this wrong. So let's have a look. In PVE, we have to go to updates and repositories, and you can see now there's no repository enabled, so we won't get any updates, so we have to enable one. What have we got here? These come from Debian Direct, and these are all enabled. They look fine. This enterprise, that needs to be disabled, otherwise it'll complain because we don't have an enterprise subscription. So let's hit disable, and then this one should be okay. Let's enable it, see what happens. Okay, it's enabled with no active subscription. That's probably okay. Let's just reload, see if there are any errors. That looks like it could be okay. So then we go to updates and do a refresh here, and this should download the package lists and compare it with the software that's installed on the server. And I've had this before, error, cannot get update because I've chosen the wrong repositories, no doubt. This takes a little bit of fiddling around sometimes. Interesting. Let's do an add. Ah, yeah, that's what I have to do. So I want to add a repository, not the enterprise one. We add the no subscription one because I have no subscription, and this is not recommended for a production environment. Never mind, let's add that. So maybe I need to disable one of these. Let's just see what happens. Updates, refresh. Okay, because that enterprise repository is enabled, it's complained. So I need to turn that off as well. It's been a while since I've done this, because once you've done it, you can just leave it and it carries on working. Where would that be? That's okay, that's PVE no subscription. So let's disable this one, like that. Reload that, see how it looks, and then try another refresh of package lists. Okay, no errors yet. Task, okay. Now when you perform these sorts of tasks, you get this okay, and when that appears, you know it's worked, and you have to wait for that. So that was okay this time. So let's close this. And these are packages that can be upgraded, so why not upgrade them while we're at it? Hit the upgrade button, and you'll see what happens. It opens a separate window. Just like Linux, do you want to continue? Yes, as the default, so just press enter. It may be that it will need a reboot. It'll recommend at the end whether to reboot or not, depending on what's actually getting upgraded. Probably it will, because it was a fresh install. Okay, it's finished, and it doesn't say a reboot is recommended, so I'll not reboot it. So let's just close that. Leave page. Okay, so this system's not updated. In fact, if I hit refresh again, it should show there are no packages to be upgraded. Let's see if that works or not. Task, okay. Yeah, they all disappeared. So as you're using this, you'll notice that as days roll on, then packages appear in this list, and then at some point you might decide to hit the refresh button. So this is it, Proxmox server. What can you do with it? It's got these 4 CPU cores and all this memory, and what you can do is you can create virtual machines on it. Here's a button, create virtual machine. So you just press the button, and which node you want to install it on. PVE is the only one we've got. This is the ID number for the virtual machine, so it'll be called number 100. You can give it a name, call it whatever you like, and operating system, you have to upload an ISO to it. We haven't actually got any ISOs in the ISO storage partition over here yet, so I can't do this yet. I'll put this in a different video, but you would upload an ISO, whatever you want. Probably the first thing I'll do is a Ubuntu desktop to show you how that works, because you can remote control it. As well as appearing in this GUI, you can also make it appear as a separate window on a machine, either using the built-in no VNC service that's built into Proxmox. So I like to use Spice because it's nicer. You copy-paste works into it, and sound works, and so on. And then I show you how to pass through hardware devices into these virtual machines, like USB devices plugged into the server. You can choose where they should go, which virtual machine, because you can have plenty of them. They're listed over here. So you can upload an ISO in the future. I'm not allowed to click through this any further, that's a shame, because there you can specify how many CPUs to give it, what size hard drive disk, how much memory and so on, and what network connections to make, and then it makes the virtual machine. So that's the subject of the next video. Also, you can create CTs. These are containers, and this is quite fun because they're ready compiled, ready installed. If you make a virtual machine and install like a desktop operating system, you have to go through the whole install process as you would if you were installing it for real on a bare metal computer. But with containers, you don't have to. And if we look down here, this is the local storage we saw earlier. When you create virtual machines, then they appear here. The disks will appear as virtual disks, and container volumes are here. But what you can access is container templates. The ISOs, when you upload them, the upload button would appear there. These container templates you can download from wherever you want, ready-made templates. You can get them from the Proxmox themselves. And here you can see you can download all of these various pre-installed operating systems into containers, and they're quite small and download quickly and run quickly, and they don't need to be installed. So it's a very fast way of spinning up a server. These are usually headless, so there's no desktop operating system. But if you want a little server to run Pi-hole or something like that, you can spin it up in just a couple of minutes. It's really quick, as I'll show you in the future. So probably that's all I wanted to show in this video, and in a future one then I'll show how to create virtual machines and how to use them and how to pass hardware through to them. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them. So we'll see you in the next video.